Cowboy took an astray Apache girl, not knowing her mother would steal his heart. The sun was just dipping behind the wide, rolling hills of the prairie, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The cowboy rode slowly along the edge of his small ranch, the wind brushing against his face and carrying the faint scent of dry grass and soil. It had been a long day of tending to the cattle, repairing fences, and fixing a broken water trough. Life on the ranch was not easy, but it was the life he knew. He liked the quiet, the steady rhythm of chores, and the endless horizon that stretched for miles. It was lonely at times, but he had learned to live with it. As he rode near the edge of the woods that bordered his land, something unusual caught his eye. A small figure moved among the trees, barely visible against the darkening shadows. At first he thought it might be an animal, perhaps a lost dog or a deer, but as he drew closer, he saw it was a girl. She was very young, no more than 12 or 13, with long, dark hair that hung in tangled strands around her face. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she looked exhausted, as if she had been wandering for a long time. The cowboy slowed his horse and watched carefully, unsure if she might run or if she needed help. She seemed frightened, her eyes wide as they darted around the woods, and she pressed herself against the trees as if trying to disappear. The cowboy felt a pang of concern. He had seen many people travel through the prairie, but a child alone in the wilderness was unusual and dangerous. The nights on the prairie were cold, and wild animals roamed freely. No one should be out here alone. "Hey there," he called softly, not wanting to scare her. "It's okay, you're safe." The girl flinched and took a small step back, her eyes filled with caution. She didn't speak, just stared at him, as if trying to decide whether he was a threat. The cowboy dismounted from his horse slowly, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. He knew he had to gain her trust. "I won't hurt you," he said, holding his hands up. "I just want to help." For a long moment she stayed silent, then she took a hesitant step toward him. Her bare feet were dusty and her knees had small scrapes. He noticed how tired she looked, how thin her arms were, and how her small frame shivered slightly in the evening breeze. He removed his coat and held it out to her. "Here, you'll be warmer with this." She looked at the coat for a moment, then slowly took it. It was far too big for her, but she wrapped it around herself like a shield. The cowboy smiled gently, trying to show her there was nothing to fear. "Come with me," he said. "You can rest at my ranch. I have food and a warm place to sleep." The girl hesitated again, but hunger and exhaustion were stronger than fear. She followed him as he led his horse back toward the ranch. The cowboy walked slowly, talking softly to her the whole way. He asked her name, where she was from, and if anyone was looking for her, but she only shook her head or remained silent. He didn't press. He knew she would speak when she was ready. By the time they reached the small wooden cabin that served as the cowboy's home, the sun had fully disappeared, and the prairie was bathed in the cool, soft light of evening. Smoke rose from the chimney, and the smell of stew simmering over the fire drifted through the air. The cowboy opened the door and gestured for the girl to enter. "Come on in, it's warm inside." The girl stepped cautiously over the threshold, her eyes wide as she looked around. The cabin was simple but neat. A few pieces of furniture, a fireplace, and shelves filled with jars of preserved food and tools lined the walls. She seemed to take in everything silently, her gaze moving from the fire to the wooden table, and finally to the cowboy. "Sit by the fire," he said, pointing to a small rug in front of the hearth. "You must be cold." The girl obeyed, crouching down on the rug and wrapping the coat tightly around herself. The cowboy went to the stove and ladled out some stew into a bowl. He brought it over and handed it to her. "Here, eat this. It will help you feel better." At first, she didn't move. Then, with a small nod, she took the bowl and began to eat slowly, as if afraid to take too much at once. The cowboy watched her carefully, noticing the way she held the bowl and the careful, almost timid way she ate. He remembered what it was like to be young and alone, and he felt a deep sense of responsibility. After she had eaten, he brought her a blanket and showed her a small corner of the cabin where she could sleep. "You'll be safe here tonight," he said. "No one will hurt you." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear, curiosity, and gratitude. For the first time she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you," the cowboy nodded. "You're welcome, you can rest now. Tomorrow we'll see what we can do about finding your family." That night, as the girl slept by the fire, the cowboy sat in his chair, staring into the flames. He couldn't stop thinking about how she had appeared out of nowhere, lost and alone. He wondered what had brought her to the prairie, what dangers she had faced, and why she had nowhere to go. He knew that taking her in was only the first step. The real challenge would be helping her feel safe, cared for, and eventually reunited with her family. The days that followed were quiet but filled with small acts of care. The cowboy taught the girl how to gather water from the creek, how to feed the chickens, and how to help with chores around the ranch. She learned quickly, her small hands nimble and her mind alert. She asked questions about the animals, the land, and the cowboy's life. He answered patiently, finding himself enjoying her curiosity and the way she looked at the world with wonder. The girl began to smile more often, and the sound of her laughter echoed through the cabin and the barnyard. The cowboy realized that her presence had changed his own life. The ranch felt less empty, the days less lonely. He found himself looking forward to seeing her in the morning, hearing her stories, and watching her grow stronger and more confident. But he also knew he had to be careful. She was a child, and his responsibility was to protect her. He couldn't let the outside world harm her, and he couldn't let her wander into danger again. The prairie was beautiful, but it was unforgiving, and he had learned that lesson many times over. As the sun rose each morning, casting golden light over the fields and the hills, the cowboy and the girl worked side by side. They tended the animals, repaired fences, and shared simple meals. Slowly, a bond formed between them, not just of necessity, but of trust and care. She began to call him friend, and he began to see her not just as a stray child in need of shelter, but as someone who had brought joy and purpose back into his life. The cowboy knew the journey was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, finding her family, protecting her from danger, and helping her heal from the loneliness and fear she had faced. But he also knew that together, they could face anything. She was no longer alone, and he had discovered a new reason to care, to protect, and to hope. For the first time in many years, the cowboy felt that life could be more than just work and solitude. The presence of the small Apache girl had opened a door to something he hadn't realized he had been missing: connection, trust, and the quiet warmth of shared lives. And though he didn't know what the future held, he was ready to face it, one day at a time with the girl by his side. The days on the ranch passed quietly, but the air was slowly filling with a new sense of life. The Apache girl, now more comfortable in her new surroundings, moved through the ranch with a confidence she had not had when she first arrived. She learned quickly, her small hands strong and capable as she helped the cowboy with the daily chores. She fed the chickens, carried buckets of water from the creek, and even learned how to help with the cows. The cowboy watched her carefully, always making sure she was safe, but he also admired her determination and the way she took pride in every task. The girl began to smile more, a soft, shy smile at first, but it grew brighter each day. She asked questions about everything she saw: the animals, the plants, the tools, and even the sky above the wide prairie. The cowboy answered each question patiently, explaining things as simply and clearly as he could. Sometimes she would tilt her head, listening carefully, then repeat what she had learned as if she wanted to remember every detail. The cowboy had not realized how much he enjoyed teaching someone, and the quiet pride in seeing her learn and grow warmed him more than the fire in the cabin ever could. In the evenings, after the chores were done, they would sit together by the fireplace. The girl would tell stories of her travels, of the forests she had seen, and the rivers she had crossed. The cowboy listened with quiet attention, never interrupting, letting her speak freely. Sometimes she spoke of her fears, being alone, the dangers she had faced, and the uncertainty of finding her family. The cowboy would reassure her gently, telling her she was safe now, and that he would make sure she was never alone again. Slowly, the bond between them grew stronger. It was a bond built on trust, care, and the quiet understanding that each needed the other. The girl began to trust him completely, following his instructions without hesitation and seeking his advice before making decisions. The cowboy, in turn, began to rely on her presence, feeling comforted by her laughter and the soft sound of her voice in the cabin. Life on the ranch, which had once been quiet and lonely, now felt full and meaningful. The girl's curiosity extended beyond the chores. She wanted to know about the stars, the changing seasons, and the animals that roamed freely in the prairie. The cowboy shared his knowledge, pointing out constellations in the night sky and explaining how the animals moved across the land. Sometimes they would ride together on horseback, the girl holding tightly as the cowboy guided her through the open fields. These moments were filled with joy, a rare happiness that neither had experienced in a long time. The townsfolk had begun to notice the girl's presence at the ranch. Some whispered about the unusual friendship, questioning why the cowboy would take in a stray child. But the cowboy paid little attention. He knew that helping someone in need was more important than the opinions of others. And the girl, though aware of the whispers, seemed unaffected. She had found safety and care, and that was all that mattered. One afternoon, as they worked together to repair a broken fence, the girl asked the cowboy about his life. "Did you always live here?" she asked, her dark eyes curious. "Yes," he replied, hammering a post into place. "I've always lived on this land. It's a hard life sometimes, but it's honest. The land provides and it teaches you patience." The girl nodded thoughtfully. "I like it here, I feel safe." The cowboy paused for a moment, looking at her. He had never thought much about expressing feelings, but he found himself saying, "I'm glad. You deserve to feel safe." Her smile was small but genuine, and it touched him more than he expected. There was something about her innocence and trust that softened the edges of his hard life. He realized that, though he had always valued independence, there was a joy in caring for someone, in knowing that he could make a difference in another person's life. As the days passed, the girl's presence brought changes to the ranch that the cowboy hadn't anticipated. The animals seemed to respond to her kindness, coming closer and showing a gentle curiosity. The cabin, once quiet and solitary, was now filled with laughter and conversation. Even the wind through the prairie seemed to carry a lighter, happier sound. The cowboy noticed these small changes and realized that the girl had become an essential part of his life, not just someone he cared for, but someone whose presence brought warmth and meaning to each day. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the girl sat beside the cowboy on the porch. The sky was painted with shades of pink and purple, and the prairie stretched endlessly before them. She leaned her head on her hands, watching the horizon, and then spoke softly. "I'm happy here, thank you for helping me." The cowboy looked at her, feeling a mixture of pride and affection. "You've worked hard to get here, I just helped you along the way. You're the one who made this place brighter." For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky change colors and listening to the soft sounds of the prairie. The cowboy realized that these quiet moments were becoming the ones he cherished most. The girl's presence had brought life back into the ranch, and he couldn't imagine returning to the solitude he had once known. As the night grew darker, the girl went inside to sleep, and the cowboy stayed on the porch a while longer, thinking about the future. He knew that their days together would eventually bring new challenges, especially in finding her family and ensuring she remained safe. But he also knew that the bond they had formed was strong enough to face anything. The girl had found a home, and he had found a new purpose. The next morning, the routine continued, but there was a new energy in the air. The girl moved with confidence, the cowboy's instructions needing little explanation. They worked together seamlessly, a team united by trust and care. The cowboy noticed how she helped not just herself, but also the animals, ensuring that everything on the ranch was in order. Her attention to detail and her kindness reminded him that even the smallest acts could have a great impact. One day, as they were gathering water from the creek, the girl slipped on a wet rock and nearly fell. The cowboy caught her just in time, holding her steady. "Careful," he said, concern clear in his voice. "I'm okay," she said, brushing herself off, but he could see the small tremble in her hands. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said gently. "I'll always be here to help." She looked up at him and nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. She realized that he truly cared, not just for her safety, but for her happiness as well. And he realized that he was beginning to care more deeply than he had expected, feeling protective and responsible in a way he hadn't felt in years. The days turned into weeks, and the girl continued to grow stronger, happier, and more confident. She began to sing softly while working, her voice light and clear, filling the cabin and barn with a cheerful sound. The cowboy found himself smiling more, laughing more, and feeling a sense of peace he had long forgotten. He had come to the prairie to live alone, but the girl's arrival had brought companionship, joy, and a sense of family he hadn't realized he needed. Yet despite the growing bond and the happiness, the cowboy never forgot that the girl had a family somewhere, and that one day she might have to leave. He tried not to think about it too much, focusing instead on the present, on the small joys of shared meals, shared work, and shared stories. He knew that for now they were safe together, and that was what mattered most. By the end of the second month, the girl was almost unrecognizable from the frightened, lost child who had first arrived at the ranch. She was strong, confident, and happy, her laughter echoing through the fields. The cowboy watched her with quiet pride, feeling a deep satisfaction in knowing that he had helped her find safety and joy. And though the future remained uncertain, he knew that the bond they shared was unbreakable, built on trust, care, and the quiet moments that had slowly stitched their lives together. For the first time in years, the cowboy felt that life on the prairie could be full of hope, friendship, and even love. He had taken in a stray child, not knowing what the future held, and yet in doing so, he had opened his heart in ways he had never imagined. The Apache girl had become not just a responsibility, but a companion, a bright light in his quiet world, and a reminder that kindness and care could transform even the loneliest of lives. The sun was warm that morning, spilling golden light across the fields and hills of the cowboy's ranch. The Apache girl was already awake, moving about the cabin quietly, humming a soft tune she had learned from the birds near the creek. The cowboy had been up earlier, tending to the animals and checking the fences. Life on the ranch had grown into a rhythm, steady and peaceful, with laughter and shared work filling the spaces that had once been empty and quiet. As the girl gathered eggs from the chicken coop, she noticed movement near the edge of the property. A woman was approaching, tall and poised, walking with a confidence that immediately caught the cowboy's attention. She was dressed simply but with care, her dark hair braided neatly, and her eyes carried a calm but commanding presence. The cowboy instinctively felt a sense of caution. He had learned long ago that strangers on the prairie could be either a blessing or a danger, and it was always best to be alert. The girl paused and watched the woman, her small hand resting on the edge of the chicken coop. When the woman noticed her, her face softened and she took a few careful steps forward. "Is this your daughter?" the woman asked, her voice steady but gentle. The girl's eyes widened and she stepped back slightly. "Mother," she whispered, almost in disbelief. The cowboy's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected anyone to come looking for the girl. He walked slowly toward the woman, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Are you looking for her?" he asked cautiously. The woman nodded. "Yes, she is my daughter. I've been searching for her since she left our settlement. I am her mother." The girl's eyes filled with tears, a mix of relief and uncertainty. She looked at the cowboy, then back at the woman, unsure of what to do. The cowboy could see the conflict in her expression. She wanted to run into her mother's arms, yet she was also afraid of leaving the safety and care she had found on the ranch. The cowboy knelt down to the girl's level. "It's okay," he said softly. "She's your mother. You can decide what you want." The girl hesitated, then slowly walked toward the woman. The mother bent down, wrapping her arms gently around her daughter. The girl clung to her, feeling a mix of comfort and confusion. The cowboy watched quietly, giving them the space they needed. He understood the importance of family, even if it meant stepping back. After a few moments, the mother pulled back and looked at the cowboy. "Thank you for taking care of her," she said sincerely. "I can see she is safe and happy here." The cowboy nodded. "She came to me alone. I couldn't leave her out there. She's been helping me on the ranch, learning quickly, and she's happy now." The woman's eyes softened as she studied him. There was something in his gaze, honesty, warmth, and a quiet strength that made her feel at ease. She smiled faintly. "I can see that. You have a good heart. She is lucky to have found you." For the first time, the cowboy noticed the woman's presence more clearly. She moved with grace, yet there was a ruggedness in her that suggested she was no stranger to hard work. She spoke with calm authority but also kindness, and the way she looked at her daughter showed a deep love that resonated with the cowboy. He felt an unexpected stir of respect and admiration for her, something he hadn't anticipated when he first saw her approach. The mother spent the rest of the morning helping the girl settle her things and making sure she had what she needed. She shared stories of their life in the settlement, talking about the traditions, the people, and the lessons she had tried to teach her daughter. The cowboy listened quietly, learning more about the girl's background, her family, and the challenges they had faced. He realized that this woman had faced many hardships herself, and yet she carried herself with dignity and strength. As the day went on, the cowboy and the mother began to speak more. They worked side by side in the barn, mending fences and preparing food. The woman had a natural way of understanding the land and the animals, and the cowboy found himself impressed by her skills. They exchanged small smiles, a quiet acknowledgement of the respect growing between them. The girl watched them carefully, sensing the bond forming. She felt safe and happy with both of them, and the thought of returning to her settlement was no longer frightening. She realized that her life had changed in ways she could not have imagined, and she felt grateful for the cowboy's kindness and the mother's love. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, the cowboy and the mother took a moment to sit on the porch. The prairie stretched endlessly before them, golden and peaceful. They spoke quietly about life on the ranch, the challenges of raising a child, and the importance of trust and care. The cowboy found himself drawn to her wisdom and warmth, and she in turn seemed to appreciate his honesty and steady presence. "You've done a lot for her," the mother said softly, looking at her daughter inside the cabin. "I can see she feels safe and loved." "That's more than I could have hoped for," the cowboy nodded. "I just did what I thought was right. She needed help and I couldn't turn her away." There was a pause filled with the gentle sounds of the prairie, the rustling grass, the distant call of a bird, and the soft whisper of the wind. The mother's eyes met his, and for a moment there was an unspoken understanding. They had both cared deeply for this girl, and in doing so, they had found a connection neither had expected. Over the next few days, the mother stayed on the ranch to ensure her daughter was comfortable and safe. She helped with chores, shared meals, and spent time teaching the girl skills that would be useful in the settlement. The cowboy and the mother worked together, finding a rhythm in their cooperation. They laughed at small mistakes, shared stories of the past, and slowly grew accustomed to each other's presence. The cowboy noticed how naturally the mother moved around the ranch, how she treated the animals with care, and how she understood the land. He admired her strength and resilience, and he found himself thinking about her in ways he hadn't thought about anyone in years. She, in turn, seemed to notice his quiet reliability, his patience, and the genuine kindness that guided his actions. A subtle bond was forming, built on respect, shared responsibility, and an unexpected warmth. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of red and gold, the three of them sat together on the porch. The girl leaned against her mother, smiling, while the cowboy sipped water and watched the sky. The mother spoke softly about the future, about teaching her daughter more about their traditions, and about the possibility of staying nearby for a while. The cowboy listened, feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. He knew that their lives were changing, and that this woman had brought something new into his world, something he could not yet define, but that felt important. That night, as the girl slept soundly, the mother and the cowboy remained on the porch, talking quietly. They shared stories of the past, of hardships and lessons learned, and slowly discovered common ground. They laughed at small anecdotes, offered advice, and found comfort in each other's company. The cowboy realized that her presence was not only a blessing for the girl, but also for him. He felt something he had not felt in years, a sense of connection, trust, and the possibility of a deeper bond. The next morning, the mother helped the girl with her chores, guiding her hands and encouraging her efforts. The cowboy watched, feeling a sense of relief and admiration. He knew that the girl was learning from both of them, gaining strength, confidence, and love. He also realized that the woman had become a presence he looked forward to seeing each day, someone whose calm strength and warmth were slowly becoming essential to his life. As the days continued, the mother's stay on the ranch became longer, and the bond between the three grew stronger. They worked together seamlessly, shared meals and stories, and laughed at small moments of joy. The cowboy found himself thinking of her in quiet moments, noticing the kindness in her eyes, the way she moved with grace, and the gentle humor in her voice. The mother, in turn, seemed to notice the cowboy's steady reliability, his quiet patience, and the deep care he had for her daughter. By the end of the week, it was clear that their lives had been changed forever. The girl was happier than ever, feeling safe and loved, while the cowboy and the mother had discovered an unexpected friendship and growing respect. The prairie, once quiet and lonely, now felt alive with possibility, warmth, and the quiet promise of a new chapter in their lives. For the first time, the cowboy realized that taking in the girl had not only saved her life, but had also brought someone new into his world. A woman whose presence stirred feelings he hadn't expected, and whose companionship promised that life on the prairie could be richer. fuller and brighter than he had ever imagined. The prairie was quiet in the early morning, the sun rising slowly over the horizon and painting the fields with soft shades of gold. The cowboy was already up, walking among the animals and checking the fences. The Apache girl was nearby, humming a cheerful tune as she carried water from the creek to the barn. Her mother had decided to stay on the ranch for a while to ensure her daughter was safe and comfortable. That morning, she moved quietly around the cabin, preparing breakfast and organizing supplies, her presence calm yet commanding. Over the past few days, the cowboy had noticed subtle changes in his own life. The ranch no longer felt quiet or lonely. The laughter of the girl and the gentle conversation of her mother filled the spaces that had once been empty. He found himself anticipating her presence each day, noticing the way she moved, the way she spoke, and the quiet strength in her gestures. He felt a sense of warmth he hadn't known in years, a feeling that surprised him as much as it comforted him. The mother and the cowboy began working more closely together, mending fences, feeding animals, preparing food. It was simple, honest work, but the way they shared these tasks allowed them to understand each other in ways words alone could not. She would hand him tools, and he would show her the best way to use them. They laughed at small mistakes, praised each other's efforts, and discovered that their teamwork was natural and easy. With every passing day, their respect and admiration for one another grew quietly but steadily. One afternoon, as the girl played near the creek, the cowboy and her mother stayed behind to repair a broken section of the fence. The mother lifted a post with surprising strength, and the cowboy helped guide it into place. They worked side by side, occasionally brushing hands or meeting each other's eyes with a small, knowing smile. It was a simple moment, yet it carried a depth neither had expected. "You handle this land well," the mother said softly, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I can see you understand it in ways not many do." The cowboy nodded, a small smile forming. "It's been my life for many years. It teaches you patience and care. And now it feels different with you and her here." She looked at him, her dark eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and warmth. "Different in a good way?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I've been alone for a long time. Your presence, it makes the ranch feel alive." For a moment they shared a quiet silence, filled only with the soft sounds of the prairie, the wind in the grass, the distant call of a bird, and the gentle babbling of the creek. There was a subtle connection forming, a bond built on trust, shared effort, and the comfort of companionship. Both felt it, though neither spoke it aloud, recognizing that some things could be understood without words. The days continued, each filled with work, laughter, and small moments of shared joy. The cowboy noticed how the mother cared for her daughter, guiding her gently, encouraging her efforts, and teaching her with patience. He admired her wisdom, her strength, and the quiet determination in her actions. She, in turn, observed his care and reliability, his steady patience, and the way he treated the girl with genuine kindness. Slowly, admiration grew into something more personal, though neither acknowledged it openly. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and red, the cowboy and the mother found themselves sitting on the porch after the day's work. The girl had gone inside to rest, and the ranch was quiet except for the soft sound of the wind through the prairie grass. They shared a simple meal, passing bread and water between them, and talked about their lives, their experiences, and their hopes for the girl's future. "You've done so much for her," the mother said softly, looking toward the cabin where her daughter was sleeping. "I can see she trusts you completely. That means more than I can express." The cowboy looked at her, his eyes reflecting the quiet depth of his thoughts. "It's natural to care for someone in need, but seeing her happy, safe, and learning, it's a reward I didn't expect." They spoke for a long while, sharing stories of the past and discussing plans for the future. The cowboy found himself opening up in ways he rarely did, revealing thoughts and feelings he usually kept to himself. She listened carefully, offering insight and understanding, her presence calming and reassuring. They discovered that they had more in common than they had realized: values, respect for life, and a desire for kindness and honesty. As the days passed, the bond between the cowboy and the mother deepened. They laughed together, worked together, and shared quiet moments that felt unexpectedly personal. The cowboy found himself noticing the way she smiled at small victories, the gentle care in her voice, and the grace in her movements. He realized he looked forward to her presence, the sound of her laughter, and the quiet wisdom in her words. She, in turn, seemed drawn to his steady reliability, his honesty, and the warmth he showed not only to her daughter but to her as well. One morning, the girl asked to help with a new task, planting seeds in the small garden near the cabin. The cowboy and her mother agreed, showing her how to dig small holes, place seeds carefully, and cover them with soil. As they worked together, the three of them laughed at small mistakes, celebrated tiny successes, and shared moments of quiet joy. It was a simple day, yet it strengthened the bond between all three, creating a sense of family that was both natural and comforting. Later that evening, after the girl had gone to bed, the cowboy and the mother sat by the fire inside the cabin. The warmth of the flames filled the room, and the quiet sounds of the prairie seeped through the open windows. They spoke softly, sharing hopes and fears, small secrets, and the joys of the day. The cowboy found himself drawn to her presence, her voice, and the quiet understanding she offered. She felt a similar pull, noticing his gentle care, his quiet strength, and the depth of his kindness. "You've done so much for her already," she said, her voice soft. "I don't know how to thank you enough." "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "Seeing her happy and safe, that's enough. But your presence here, helping her and working with me, that makes the ranch feel complete." There was a pause, filled with unspoken words, a quiet acknowledgement of the connection forming between them. They shared a look, gentle and understanding, realizing that their bond was growing into something deeper. Neither rushed, knowing that the trust, respect, and care they had built were the foundation of something strong and lasting. Over the next few weeks, the cowboy and the mother continued to work closely together. They repaired fences, tended animals, prepared meals, and cared for the girl with unwavering dedication. Each day brought new opportunities to learn from one another, share responsibilities, and deepen the connection that had begun to form. Their conversations grew more personal, their laughter more frequent, and their respect for one another more profound. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the cowboy and the mother walked along the edge of the ranch, surveying the land. The girl played nearby, her laughter carrying across the fields. They spoke quietly about plans for the future, about teaching her daughter more skills, and about maintaining the safety and happiness of the ranch. In those moments, the cowboy realized that he had come to care deeply for her, not just as the mother of the girl, but as a person, a companion, and someone who had brought warmth, life, and hope into his world. The mother, too, felt a growing admiration and fondness for the cowboy. She recognized his kindness, his reliability, and the way he treated her daughter with unwavering care. She felt a sense of comfort in his presence, a connection that went beyond friendship, and a quiet hope that their lives could intertwine in ways she had never expected. By the end of the 4th week, it was clear that their lives had changed forever. The girl was thriving, confident, and happy, her laughter filling the ranch. The cowboy and her mother had formed a partnership built on trust, respect, and a growing affection. The prairie, once quiet and lonely, now felt alive with possibility, warmth, and the promise of a brighter future. The cowboy realized that he had found something unexpected in his life, a companion who understood him, shared his values, and brought a joy he had not thought possible. The mother recognized that she had found someone she could trust, admire, and perhaps even love, someone who had cared for her daughter as if she were his own. Together, they had created a small, happy world on the ranch, a place where safety, care, and love could flourish. As night fell, the cowboy sat on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one in the clear prairie sky. The mother joined him, sitting quietly, their shoulders almost touching. The girl slept peacefully inside, and the ranch was filled with a sense of calm and satisfaction. They spoke softly about the day, about plans for tomorrow, and about the small joys that had filled their lives. In that quiet moment, the cowboy understood that his heart had been touched in ways he had not expected. The bond between him and the mother had grown slowly, naturally, and deeply. He felt a sense of hope, joy, and connection that he had never known in his solitary life. And he knew that together they could face anything, challenges, hardships, and the uncertainties of the future, because they had found each other, and in doing so they had found a family. The prairie was calm that morning, with a soft, golden light spilling across the fields and hills. The cowboy had been awake before sunrise, checking on the animals and ensuring that the fences were secure. Life on the ranch had grown into a comfortable rhythm, filled with the quiet joy of daily work, shared meals, and the gentle presence of the Apache girl and her mother. The ranch, once quiet and lonely, now hummed with life, laughter, and a sense of family that had slowly formed over the weeks. The girl was already outside, running toward the barn with a basket of eggs she had collected from the chickens. Her mother followed closely, moving gracefully as she carried water and tools for the day's chores. The cowboy watched them, feeling a warmth in his chest that was hard to describe. He realized that he had not only found a companion in her mother, but had also discovered a new purpose in his life, caring for a family, protecting them, and ensuring their happiness. That morning, as the three of them worked together to repair a section of fence damaged by the previous night's windstorm, the cowboy noticed something in the way the mother moved. She was strong, capable, and full of quiet confidence, yet there was a softness in her gestures, especially when she glanced at her daughter. He felt a growing admiration for her, a feeling deeper than respect, something that made his heart beat a little faster without him fully understanding why. The girl, noticing the quiet exchange, smiled up at both of them. "I like it here," she said softly, placing a wooden post in the ground. "I feel safe and happy." The cowboy looked at her, then at her mother, and nodded. "We'll make sure it stays that way," he said. "Nothing will harm you here." The mother smiled, a gentle, warm expression that reached her eyes. "We are lucky to have found this place and each other," she said. There was a pause filled with unspoken meaning, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had grown between them. As the days passed, the three worked side by side, sharing chores, meals, and stories. They repaired fences, tended to animals, and planted small gardens. Each day brought new joys, from the girl discovering a hidden nest of eggs to the mother teaching her how to sew and cook simple meals. The cowboy found himself laughing more, enjoying the small victories and quiet moments that life on the ranch provided. He had never expected that taking in a stray girl could lead to such happiness, yet the presence of the mother added a depth to his life he had never known. One afternoon, as they rested on the porch after a long morning of work, the cowboy and the mother spoke quietly while the girl played nearby. They shared stories of their pasts, of hardships and small triumphs, and discovered more common ground than they had ever imagined. The cowboy realized that he felt drawn to her in a way he had never experienced. Her kindness, wisdom, and quiet strength had become essential to his life, and he noticed himself looking for her smile, her voice, and her company more and more each day. The mother, too, found herself noticing the cowboy in ways she had not before. His steady presence, his honesty, and the deep care he showed for her daughter and the land had earned her respect, and something more. She felt a warmth in her heart whenever he was near, a quiet sense of comfort and admiration that made her feel both safe and happy. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, the cowboy found the courage to speak his feelings. They had been working in the barn, repairing a gate, when he paused and looked at her. "I've been thinking," he began slowly, "about all of this, about you and her and this ranch. I realize that my life has changed in ways I never expected. You've brought something here that I didn't know I was missing." The mother looked at him, curiosity and warmth in her eyes. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "I mean, I care for you, not just for what you've done for her, but for who you are. You've become a part of this place and a part of my life in ways I didn't think possible. I want us to stay together as a family." Her eyes softened and a small smile formed on her lips. "I feel the same way," she said quietly. "I've come to trust you, admire you, and care for you deeply. You've given my daughter safety, love, and happiness, and you've given me something I didn't expect, a place where I belong." The cowboy felt a rush of relief and joy. The words they had both felt for weeks, perhaps months, were finally spoken aloud. It was a quiet, heartfelt moment, filled with understanding, warmth, and the promise of a shared future. They smiled at each other, knowing that their bond was strong and true. From that day on, their life on the ranch took on a new meaning. They were no longer just a man and a woman living side by side with a child. They were a family. The girl thrived under their care, her laughter filling the cabin and fields, her curiosity and energy a constant source of joy. She learned new skills, played freely, and grew confident in the knowledge that she was loved and protected. The cowboy found himself planning for the future in ways he had never done before. He considered improvements to the ranch, new tools, and better ways to care for the animals and crops. But more importantly, he thought about ways to make their home more comfortable, welcoming, and safe for the girl and her mother. Each decision, each small effort, was motivated by the love and respect he felt for them. The mother, in turn, embraced her new life on the ranch with quiet determination. She worked alongside the cowboy, sharing responsibilities, teaching the girl, and ensuring that their home was filled with care and happiness. She felt a deep gratitude for the man who had taken in her daughter and a growing affection for the man who had become her partner. Together, they built a life of harmony, trust, and shared purpose. The prairie, which had once been a place of solitude and hard work, now felt vibrant and alive. The wind through the grass seemed to carry laughter. The animals responded to the gentle care of all three, and the cabin glowed with warmth and comfort. Each day brought new joys, from planting gardens to watching the sunset together. The cowboy, the girl, and her mother had created a world where safety, love, and happiness flourished. One crisp morning, as the first frost touched the fields, the cowboy and the mother worked together to prepare firewood and secure the cabin for the coming winter. The girl helped, carrying small bundles of sticks and laughing as she stumbled over uneven ground. They paused to watch her, smiling, and the cowboy felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had rescued a stray girl, and in return he had gained a family, love, and a sense of purpose he had never known. As night fell, they sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets and watching the stars appear one by one. The girl leaned against her mother, and the cowboy sat close, feeling the quiet comfort of their presence. They spoke softly about the day, their plans, and the dreams they held for the future. The prairie stretched endlessly before them, but for the first time, the cowboy felt that the horizon was not lonely. It was filled with possibility, hope, and the warmth of family. In the months that followed, their life together continued to grow stronger. The girl flourished, her confidence and happiness a testament to the care she received. The cowboy and her mother shared responsibilities, laughter, and quiet moments of affection. They faced challenges together, celebrated small victories, and built a home where love, trust, and safety were constants. The ranch, once a place of solitude, had become a sanctuary, a place where three hearts were united in care, respect, and deep affection. By the end of the first year together, it was clear that their bond was unbreakable. The cowboy had come to rescue a stray girl, but in doing so, he had discovered a love he had never imagined. The mother had found a partner she could trust, admire, and love, and the girl had found a home filled with warmth, care, and laughter. They had become a family not by chance but by choice, a family built on compassion, trust, and the quiet power of love. On a clear spring morning, as the sun rose over the prairie, the three of them stood together, looking out over the fields and hills. The girl held both of their hands, her eyes shining with happiness and security. The cowboy and the mother exchanged a glance, a silent promise that they would protect, nurture, and care for one another for as long as they lived. The ranch, the prairie, and the endless horizon had become the backdrop of a story of kindness, courage, and the power of love to transform lives. And in that moment, the cowboy realized something profound. He had set out to help a lost child, but in return, he had found a family, a partner, and a life richer and fuller than he could have ever imagined. The girl had brought joy to his days, her mother had brought warmth to his heart, and together they had created a home where happiness, safety, and love would thrive forever.